Okay, now we're going to move on to the next question. This is question number 11. The question number 11 is saying the level of chemicals in the body that speed up cellular activity is regulated by what? So the question is asking you all of the chemicals, the level of the chemicals in the body. So which is used to speed up cellular activity. So meaning the enzymatic reaction or some other reaction related with chemicals in the body. So what regulates them? So if you look at all the options given to you, action potential is part of is related to most nervous system, whereby they release some signals which helps to transport impulses from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. Option C, the sympathetic nervous system, if you could still remember, they are not related to helping to speed up activities. The same as the parasympathetic nervous system, they're not also related to helping to speed up activity. So the one that actually seems to be the most correct answer is the feedback inhibition. So the feedback system helps to control the rate at which some chemical reactions happen in the body. So question number 12 says, which system coordinates the body's response to changes in its internal and external environment? So which system coordinates? So the question is asking you, which system would do the coordination of the body responses to changes? If there is a change in environmental condition, let's say, for example, things get really cold and the body you want to start shivering. So what generates these changes to this external or internal environmental condition? Or let's say someone is eating a poison and the body system wants to react to the poison being eaten. What system coordinates the body responses? So this is a very tricky question. So one says lymphatic system. I think I already told you what the lymphatic system, what it does, is not actually responsible for this. The excretory system, which is a system that helps to get rid of waste materials from the body. The reproductive system helps to make the organism to produce offspring. So the one that seems to be the most correct is the nervous system. So the nervous system would receive impulses from the external environment or the internal, and it's going to send a message to the brain, and the brain sends a feedback, a response that it should do something. So this is the most correct answer. So question number 12, the most correct answer is B, nervous system. So question number 13 says, neurons are classified by what? What do we use to classify a neuron? Neurons, as you know, is another name for nerve cells. The nerve cells help to carry messages to the brain or from the brain. So how do we classify the neurons? What are the conditions we see to classify the neurons? So one says direction in which they carry impulses. Option B says amount of metabolic activities that takes place. Option C says number of dendrites that branch out. D says number of impulses they carry. So the number of impulses they carry is a lot. It's tons of impulses. We cannot even count that. So that could not be a factor. Number of dendrites you have on the nerve cell is not a factor that affects naming it, because most dendrites, they are just very obvious in one single cell. So every nerve cell would have its own dendrites. Amount of metabolic activity also could not be a factor. So the one that seems most correct is the direction in which they carry the impulses. So the one that carry the impulses from the brain to the body, if let's say, for example, you touch something very hot, there's impulses taken from your palm to the brain. That is a sensory neuron. And when the response is coming from the brain, to your palm to make you take your palm off the hot thing, that is a motor neuron. So the direction in which they carry the impulse is a factor that determines you naming them what you call them. So question number 14 says, cells that transmit electrical signals through the nervous system to various organs in the body are called what? So we have some cells which are responsible for carrying impulses, electrical signals from the nervous system to the body. We call them, when you say nerves, nerves does not actually does not actually tell more about the cells. So either you say nerve cells or you say neurons, but you cannot say nerves. So neurons are called the nerve cells. So the nerve cell is most correct than the neurons is more correct than the nerves. So the option B seems to be most correct. So question number 15 says, what begins when the neuron is stimulated by another neuron or by the environment? So what happens when there is a trigger, when there is a stimulation by a neuron for another neuron? Because neurons usually stimulate themselves. They usually trigger responses by sending impulse from themselves to another nerve cell. So the options we have says, what begins when a nerve or a neuron is stimulated by another neuron or by the environment? Is it a threshold? A threshold is not, because a threshold is a maximum amount of impulses which the nerve cell needs to collect before it responds to an action, before it gives a response. So that's what a threshold is. An action potential is a kind of all of the responses which would happen that has to do with going and coming back of the impulses. A dendrite is just a finger-like structure of the nerve cell. So the most correct answer for question number 15 is an impulse. So an impulse is generated when a stimulation is being done from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. So question number 16 says, what is a function of neurotransmitter? A neurotransmitter is the one that actually transmits impulses across the synapses. So it moves a nerve impulse from one synapse to another synapse. So this is what a neurotransmitter, this is what it does. So transmit nerve impulses through dendrites, not that correct. Stimulate the production of epinephrine. Not really. None of the above, that's not correct. So the most correct one is C. So question number 16 is C. So question number 17 says, for a neuron to reach an action potential, what would happen? So now we get into the action potential itself. So before a neuron can reach an action potential, what must happen? So the A says release electrons. Releasing electrons is not what brings them to action potential. Absorb calcium, not really, cannot be the reason. Reverse the electrical charge across the cell membrane. That seems to be correct. And D says take in sodium ions. They seem to be very close to that, but reverse the electrical charge across the cell membrane is the most correct. So because if you could remember, we talked about the potassium and sodium across the cell membrane. So once they reverse the electrical charge across the cell membrane, the meaning is what they've reached the action potential. So these I want you to recollect from what we did before. So question number 18 is going to be with figure 35.1. So this is a picture that depicts the nerve cell. So refer to the figure 35.1, the cell body of a neuron collects information from which of the structures. So 18 is saying it could not be A. Answer could not be E, because this is the nucleus. And this is a subbody, could not also be. And these are the axons, which carry impulses across the nerve cell. So the answer, the most correct answer, is the dendrites, which is here, which is A. So it's going to be what? It's going to be A. So now the next one. So question number 18's answer is A. So question number 19 says, when an impulse reaches the end of the neuron. So when the impulse comes and it reaches the end of the neuron, what does it trigger? It triggers the release of what? So it triggers the release of dendrite? No, because dendrite is part of the nerve cell. Receptor? No. Sodium ions? No. So the most correct answer is a neurotransmitter. So when it gets to when the impulse reaches the end of one neuron, it triggers the neurotransmitters to release the ions, and that would allow the passing across of the impulses from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. So question number 19's answer is A. So question number 20, which is going to be the last question for this section. What is a function of the central nervous system? You can still remember we talked about this nervous system as the central and the peripheral. So the central nervous system is the most important part of the nervous system. Relay messages seems correct. Process information seems correct. Analyze information seems correct. So the meaning is all of the three is a function of the central nervous system. So this is going to be the end for today. Thank you very much for listening.